How's everybody doing today? Doing all right? Everybody enjoyed their holiday? Anybody have to travel for Thanksgiving? Raise your hand. There's some of us that had to travel for Thanksgiving. Did anybody get lost on their way to traveling from Thanksgiving, right? Has anybody just gotten lost while you're driving in general, right? Like you swear you know how to get to this road and how to get to this person's house, and all of a sudden it is not happening whatsoever, right? Like you're driving and you think you know how to get to mom's house, and all of a sudden none of the houses look familiar, and you're like, that bridge wasn't there before. Yikes. Right? I'm from North Jersey, which, let's be honest, should be its own state, right? I'm from North Jersey, and when you're in North Jersey, when you make a wrong turn, it's the difference between you being in rich suburbia and you being right in the middle of the hood, right? Like, there's certain places in North Jersey that, like, you'll be fine, right? But, like, around where I grew up, especially right where I went to church, you drove down the street and you were in the heart of Patterson, which is not a pretty place if you don't know that, right? So, like, you're driving to mom's house and you're all excited, and then all of a sudden, you made a wrong turn and you're at a light and two dudes jump in the back of your car and you're the getaway driver for a robbery now. You're like, okay, I guess this is happening, right? You got a little lost, you got yourself in a bad position, right? You can't when somebody's in your car, though, you can't let them know that you have taken a wrong turn, right? Of course not. I would never, me? Wrong turn? No way, right? So you're driving along, and all of a sudden you're still driving, and you're still driving, you're still going, right? And then the person's like, hey, I thought that this ride was only going to be about an hour, and it's definitely been 2. And you're like, no, we're just taking the scenic route. It's fine. This is fine. And we're going to go on back roads. And then you're like bumping up and down, and you're like, oh, by back roads I mean dirt roads, and yeah. So you just got a little lost. You found yourself in a bad position. You found yourself in a place where you didn't really belong. In today's message, I want to let you know the title of this message is The Position of the Prodigal. We're going to be going over Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 1 through 2. Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 1 and 2 there. We have the verses up on the screen. And it says this: Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near to him, that being Jesus, to listen to him. Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, This man receives sinners, and he eats with them. You might have heard the phrase before that Jesus was a friend of sinners, right? That's the reason why the Pharisees are looking at him. Some other translations say that he was a friend of sinners. And you might be thinking, why would he do that? Why would he be around these people, right? And the answer is because Jesus had a cure. Jesus had a cure. And these were people that were around him who were broken people, who were hurting people, and Jesus had a cure. There's not often times when there's a doctor who only sees healthy people, right? There's doctors who see sick people, because if it was just healthy people, it'd be like, okay, who's the next patient? Come on in. How you feeling? Oh, I'm great, the healthiest I've ever been. Great, tell me more about that, right? Like, now it's just like a regular conversation. You're not coming to find healing. But Jesus sits with the tax collectors. He sits with the sinners because he has a cure and they need healing, right? So you might be in this place today and you're hurt and you are jacked up. Good, you have found yourself in the right place to be, right? You found yourself in the right place to be because we're all here and we're all a little jacked up, and we all want to see how Jesus is going to change us. We all want to see what Jesus is going to do. The fountain of life will not be a museum for the saints to come and polish their halos, but it will be a hospital for broken people to find healing, and we have a good God who's willing to give that. So you're messed up, so are we, and just like Jesus would say, you can sit next to me. I rhymed. I didn't mean to do that, but there you go. So when Jesus gets told that he is a friend of sinners, like that was a bad thing, Jesus' reply to the Pharisees and to these religious leaders at the time, his reply wasn't this direct response that he was going to give them. Instead, he'd do what he often does, and he was going to tell them a story. He's going to tell them a story, actually tell them a series of stories. And you may have known some of these stories. They might be familiar to you. But what he does is that he shares and he says, you know what? There was a shepherd. A shepherd had 100 sheep. He had 100 sheep. One of those sheep, ran off. And what the shepherd did is he left the 99, and then he went after the one, right? Some people would think oh, you've got 99 other sheep, what's the big deal? But the shepherd thought every single one of his sheep were important and had value, so he left those 99 and he went after the one. He found that sheep, he grabbed that sheep, put him on his shoulders, and then walked that sheep all the way back home. And when he got home, he was surrounded by all his other sheep, and he gathered all of his friends all together, and he said, let's celebrate, I found my lost sheep, right? See, that's how God cares for us. And then Jesus tells a story about a woman who had 10 silver coins, and she loses one of those coins, and she tears her house apart, flipping her house upside down in order to find that one coin. And when she found that one coin, she gathered all of her friends together, and she celebrated and said, I lost my one coin, I found it again, I have all 10 of my coins, let's celebrate. And that's how God searches for you. And then he tells the story of a lost son. We'll go to Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 11, and it says this, and he said, a man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate that falls on me. So he divided his wealth between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country. And there he squandered his entire estate with loose living. Now when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be impoverished. So he went and hired himself out to one of the civilians of the country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. But when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men had more than enough bread, but I am dying here with hunger. I will get up and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be your son. Make me as one of your hired men. So he got up, he came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to his father, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf. Kill it and let us celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. And then they began to celebrate. So Jesus tells a story that a son comes up to his dad one day. Maybe his dad is in his office and he's trying to figure out all of his files, all of his things going on, right? Sitting in his office. His son comes up to him one day and they start some small talk, some chatter, right? And then the son cuts to the chase and he says, hey, Dad, I wish you would drop dead. Right? See, we look at this, and we look at this scripture, and if we peel back all of the cultural layers that are happening here, that's essentially what he says, right? He essentially gets to the point where he's really saying, he's like, hey, listen, I know that when you die, I'm in your will, right? I get that. I'm your son. I'm in your will. So when you die, I'm going to get some stuff from the house and from the farm and from the bank account and everything like that. And so instead of us just pretending for the next 30 and 40 years, right, let's just cut to the chase and you just give it all that's owed to me right now, right? Just give it all to me right now. This is essentially what he's saying. And when Jesus says this story to the Pharisees, I can almost guarantee that the air was sucked right out of the room. Because in this culture really valued honor, especially honoring the father, especially honoring the Father, because when we look at this, right, it was even one of the commandments that this guy would have understood, the son would have understood, to honor his mother and father. And all of a sudden, what he's doing instead is insulting him and saying, can you just drop dead? Can we just finish this? Just give me what's owed to me, and let's move on our way. So what does the father do? He takes this insult, he goes to his balance sheets, goes through his files, tries to figure out what he's got, what he has in the house, what he has in the farm, what he has in his furniture, what he has in the bank account. He figures all of it out, and then he says, all right, here, this is what I owe you, this is what you wanted, here's that money, right? So we look at this, and we think, why would the father ever do that? Why would the father do that in this position? Why would that ever happen? And the reason is because God has given us free will. God has given us free will so that we can essentially take our ball and go home if we'd like. He's given us free will where it doesn't really, it's really not something that he's interested in to try to force you to believe anything in particular, anything specific. But he gives you the choice, he gives you the ability to make the decision, and gives you the responsibility if you want to take your suitcase full of cash and head on your way, right? God gives us that choice. God's positioned you to have a choice because love demands a choice, right? So this guy, he grabs all of his stuff all together. He takes his new suitcase full of cash, and he goes on his way to whatever Vegas was around back then, right? He goes back there, and he can see all the lights, and it's really beautiful, and he's really excited, and he hears the club, the music's going, and he's like, tss, 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 tss. From Jersey, you see that pump coming on? And then it's like, somebody scream! Wah, 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 wah. Some of y'all laughed way too hard at that joke. Watch yourself. Just kidding. Right? I've never been to a club, so I don't know what that sounds like. That was my best attempt. That's all you got, right? So he takes all of this money, he takes all of this stuff, and then he goes on this huge spending bender, right? He goes and buys himself new clothes, he goes and buys himself new shoes, new jewelry, whatever it is. He buys all of this new stuff, right? And he walks into the club and he's like, yo, drinks on me, everybody, let's do it, right? Everyone's really excited that everyone's thinking this guy's the best. He's like Oprah in this place. He's like, you get a donkey, and you get a donkey, and you get a donkey, and you get a donkey, right? So he makes all these new friends, invites them up to the penthouse. They're doing the thing. There's bottle service. This dude's like super, super popular, right? Until all the money runs out. Right? And as if that wasn't enough, it's not just that the money ran out, it was also that there was a severe recession, economic recession that was happening in that land at the time. So this was the worst possible time to not have any money. This is the worst time to not have any money. And so what does he do? He tries to call his friends, tries to text his friends, maybe DMing some people, trying to be like, yo, remember that donkey that I gave you? I'm gonna need that back, right? He tries to talk them through and try to reach out to people, and no one is getting back to him. No one's reaching out to him. But the thing is, right, that he's got nothing. He doesn't know where to go next. He doesn't know what's gonna go on, and so he tries to find himself a job, and he can't. There's no jobs available. There's nothing available for him to be able to do, and so finally, he decides, he's so desperate that he's going to work at this pig farmer. Work for this pig farmer. And here's the thing about the text here that we can miss very quickly when we look with our Western modern eyes, right? Well, we can end up looking at this text and thinking like, oh, good on him. He got himself a job. He finally figured it out. Everything's good. He's about to be a self-made man, right? This is going to work out really well for him. But see, here's the thing about the text. The text actually implies that what he did was that he started working in a field in hopes that he was going to get paid. He started working and just hoping that the pig farmer would feel guilty enough in order to pay him. It's like when somebody comes and you try to get gas, you're like, oh, fill it up regular, and then somebody comes with a squeegee and tries to clean off your windshield, right? And then he does a worse job and your windshield looks worse than it ever was before, right? But you feel obligated, so you try to give him a tip or whatever, and you try to give him something. That's essentially what this guy's doing here, right? He's working in hopes that he would be able to get a job, not really sure if he's actually going to get paid here. See, on top of not really being able to get a job, when Jesus is sharing this story with the Pharisees and the religious leaders, when he's sharing this story with all of them, what would have ended up happening is that these Pharisees would have been so disgusted by this idea. They would have been mortified by this. Because here was this Jewish man who left, squandered everything, and then ended up working with pigs. And Hebrews in general, did not work with pigs. They were disgusting. They were not allowed anywhere near, right? So much so that it was a commandment in the Old Testament that they weren't allowed to deal with any pigs, right? They were absolutely disgusted by this entire idea. So the thing is that this wasn't just a little bit of a change that this guy went through. This wasn't like, oh, I just moved to a different town. This wasn't even, this guy changing majors. I was a business major, and now I'm going to go into education. It wasn't like that at all. When this son decided to work with pigs, it was now a religious decision that he was making. Because he's now saying, I'm so far gone from where I was, there's no hope for me anymore. And the best thing that I can do is just try my best, even if it means I have to give up everything. I have to give up everything and work with these pigs. He thought he was so far gone, he might as well just keep going. See, all of a sudden, the prodigal son has turned his back on his family. The prodigal son has turned his back on his faith. And he's so hungry in this moment that he is contemplating, wow, that pig food doesn't look so bad. If I can just put something in my stomach, everything's going to be okay, right? So he ends up leaning over, scooping up some food that is on the ground and contemplating whether he should shove that in his mouth or not, just to have something. And that's exactly what sin does to us. See, sin will take you farther than you ever wanted to go. It will keep you longer than you wanted to stay. And then it'll cause you to do things that you would never imagine yourself doing before. Right? I heard it said that what sin has inside of the bottle is always different than what's actually on the label. See, it looks great on the outside. Maybe I can just cheat on my taxes a little bit here, right? Maybe I can just sleep around just this once, right? It's no big deal. It's no big deal. Everything's going to be okay, right? But the thing is that sin always overpromises and underdelivers. We compromise here and we fall short there, and all of a sudden we're in a completely different position than we found ourselves in years ago, months ago, days ago. We're lost on a road because we made too many wrong turns, and we found ourselves in a position where we don't know how to get back. But let me tell you something. Jesus says if you are thirsty, you can come and drink. Jesus says when you are thirsty that you can come and drink, because there is no party, there is no guy, there is no girl, there is no career, there is no car, there's no size of house or size of bank account that will ever satisfy you. But I'm telling you right now, a relationship with God, Jesus, will satisfy you. And we find that hope in verse 17 here, right? Because in verse 17 it says this, but he, the son, came to his senses. So when he came to recognize that he was fed up with where he was at, he actually thought, at one point I thought my father's house was holding me back, but it was actually the only thing that was holding me up. Sometimes we get into these positions where we get so lost and get into this mindset that if I follow after this faith, if I do these things, it's going to be holding me back. No, I promise you, God is going to be holding you up through every step of that way. He realizes that even in his father's house, the workers had food on their table. The workers at least had something, right? Like they had bread enough, they had food enough and some to spare. Their cabinets were full. They had the best kind of cereal, that Captain Crunch, And not just like the regular Captain Crunch, the one that's like, oops, all berries. You know what I mean? Because that John is better and you know it, right? So the workers had food and had more to spare, right? See, and he had absolutely nothing. He's there and he's starving. He's starving. And he doesn't know where his next meal is going to come from. So he comes to his senses. He gets fed up with where he is in his life. And then he decides he's going to own up to the things that he's done wrong. He's going to own up to the things that he's done wrong. So he tries to figure out this game plan. If I can go back to my father's house, it's going to be embarrassing. I'm going to be nervous. But if I can go back to my father's house and simply beg that he would allow me to be a hired hand, right? I would at least have something on my plate. I won't have the same thing that I had before, but I will at least have something on my plate, right? If I can just go and do that. And this is what I want us to notice and I want us to look at here. Notice what the Father does. Notice what the Father does here, right? Because the Son is walking up again, and he's trying to come on up, trying to get back to the house. And maybe the Father's out in his field and he's working and he's doing something, right? Trying to figure it out. And he's there and he's longing for his son. He misses his son. His son has been gone, and he's thought about his son day in and day out every single day. And he's there, and he's just working. And all of a sudden, from far off, he sees his son. From far off, he sees his son. And so what ends up happening here is that the father runs in order to get to the son as fast as he possibly can. He doesn't walk. He runs in order to get to his son as fast as he can. What we have to kind of come and recognize in this passage, right? It was silly for a Jewish man to be running. It was silly for a Jewish man to be running. Because they would have been looking at this and been thinking, only fools and children run. This guy is undistinguished. This guy is not respectable that he went and he was running, right? He ran after this guy. It makes no sense whatsoever. But he runs after his son, runs towards his son. He picks his son up, he hugs him, and he kisses him, right? And then we have this in verses 22 here, 21 and 22. It says this. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. See, what does he do? He ignores this thing of being a hired hand, right? He ignores that altogether, and he says, no, you are my son. You have a position, and I'm giving you that right back because I love you, and I care about you, and I have something amazing for you, something absolutely incredible for you. Somebody showed me this quote. Kyle Idleman said this. He says, the worst thing that could happen is that you spend your life trying to outrun God because you think he's chasing you to collect what you owe, when he's really chasing you to give you what you could never afford. See, we spend so much of our lives trying to figure out how I can do this on my own. And this gets to a place where it actually pours into our relationship with God, right? We think, oh no, I can't ever go to church. God will never accept me. I can never do that. I'm too far gone. There's too much that I've messed up in. And so we think that I have to find satisfaction in my life on my own. I have to be able to find redemption on my own. I have to be able to figure this out on my own, fix my own situation. I have to be able to find the position on my own. I have to do this all on my own. But this is the thing. God isn't interested in how you're trying to figure it out on your own, because he knows you can't get there on your own. He knows that you can't get there on your own. Instead, because of his great love for you, he offers a position that you could never receive or afford on your own. See, oftentimes we look at the word prodigal, especially in the context of this story, and we think prodigal means lost or wayward. We look at this and we think that prodigal is referring to the fact that this son just spent a lot of money. right? But in our reality, prodigal doesn't mean lost and wayward. Prodigal actually means recklessly extravagant. Recklessly extravagant. What's really important to look at this text and understanding the proper definition of prodigal is, the son was recklessly extravagant with his spending, but the father was recklessly extravagant with his love for his son. That it didn't matter the things that the son had done. It didn't matter about the insults that were thrown at the father. It didn't matter any of those things. Instead, he was going to be recklessly extravagant, run to be able to find his son again so that he can see his son for the first time in such a long time, right? See, here's my sermon in a sentence. I normally bring it to you on the front end, but I'm bringing it on the back end on this one. See, you have an extravagant position because of his extravagant love. You have an extravagant position because of his extravagant love. And I want us to be able to recognize something that actually happens here, right? Back to verse 21, what it says is that he goes and he tries to say, God, let me just Father, let me be one of your hired men. If I could just be one of your hired men, everything's going to be okay, right? But then the father says, no, I'm giving you a position. I'm giving you a position back. And so whatever servant's around, I need you to get a coat. I need you to get a ring. I need to show that this kid means something to me, right? So in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22, it says this. It says, throw off your old sinful nature, your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and your attitudes. Put on the new nature created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. In order to show this, I'm actually going to need a little bit of help. Bill, if you wouldn't mind helping me out really quick. Just grab those things right off the front here. See, the father comes and he comes and runs. He offers him he hugs him, he kisses him, right? He offers him a new coat. He offers him just all of this newness. Let me see this hoodie really quick, right? So what ends up happening is that in my life, I'm covered in sin. I'm covered in sin because I have a sinful nature, right? You've heard it said before that a baby doesn't have to be taught the word no. He just knows, right? There's something in us that we have the inclination for bad. Something in us that has the inclination to maybe want to hurt people, maybe just be selfish and so inward, right? So I have this, and this represents my drug addiction. This represents my alcoholism. This represents my hatred for somebody just because of the color of their skin. This represents how I withhold love or care for somebody because they're not from around here. This represents my sin and my depravity. Not just the things that I've done wrong, but the very nature that I have to be selfish and inward. And when I get to a position where I get fed up with this, and I own up to this, while I'm walking away further and further away from God, I get to the place where I'm fed up with this, I have the opportunity to turn back around and turn towards God. Because if I will turn away from my old life, there is a heavenly Father that is always willing to accept me. So I get to come back, and I'm fed up with this. I don't want this anymore. And I can throw off this old nature that doesn't belong on me because I've decided I'm fed up, I'm owning up to what's wrong, and all of a sudden, I got a new coat. Baby, I look good, you know? all of a sudden, there's something new in me. God has offered something new to me. That I no longer have to hold on to my old selfishness and the things that are hurting, but instead I can run to the Father. The Father's running towards me. He's hugging and he's kissing me. Don't kiss me. But he's offering this new life, this new coat, this new identity, right? And so all of a sudden, because I've come back to the Father, he's given me a new coat, he's given me this new life. I don't want to go to the same places I was going to before. I'm not going to go play in the mud in this coat. This coat doesn't belong in the mud, right? I'm not going to go back to those old habits. I'm not going to go back to those things that don't belong in my life because I have been given a new position, an extravagant position because of God's extravagant love. And this is the thing about the new position, right? I took off the old thing, right? And then my mind started to become renewed by the power of the Holy Spirit. So now my attitudes and my thoughts are different too. So I'm not going to go back to all those things that I don't belong in. All of a sudden I recognize that no, my life isn't used for those things. My life shouldn't be used for that. I'm not going to go back to that. I'm not going to go back to that life. I'm not going to go back to those drugs. I'm not going to go back to that hatred. I'm not going to go back to those things because God has given me something new. Amen. And my newness, the things that I have on me, this doesn't represent the environment that was offering. I have this newness again. Let's give a round of applause to Bill over here. Thanks so much, man. Love you, man. Right? I have this newness all over again. There's something that I have that God has offered me, new clothes. I'm not covered by those old same things, that old life that I don't need anymore. All of a sudden, I have a new nature created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. I no longer have to pretend to everybody that everything's fine and I'm doing okay. Because I am truly righteous and truly holy because of what God has done for me, right? I have the real stuff now. I have a new extravagant position because of his extravagant love. You see, your sin is no match for God's love. Your sin is no match for God's love. My old life is gone because and this is the thing, right? My old life is gone not because of the right things that I've done. Not because of the things that I have achieved or the things that I've accomplished, right? My life has nothing to do with me being a good enough person. I have a new life because I turned towards God and God offered me this new position and I accepted that new position. It's the only reason why I have this, right? Because of his extravagant love is the reason why I have an extravagant position. Now all of a sudden, I don't want to do those things anymore. The Holy Spirit is renewing my mind. I'm giving up those bad habits. I'm giving up those things that were hurting me before. I'm not going to go through those things anymore. See, the Father gives him a new coat. And then he gives him a new ring too. I have this ring on my finger here, right? As an indication that I am married to Meredith. It's an indication to say that I am taken. I am spoken for, right? This means that I belong to somebody. So when the Father gave the Son a ring, it was the Father saying that he belongs somewhere. He belongs to a family. He belongs to somebody specific. No, it doesn't mean that I'm allowing my body to just be used for whatever. It means that my body belongs to somebody, my life belongs to somebody, and I'm not going to go and offer it to somebody else. See, the Spirit renewed my thoughts and my attitudes, and now I'm different. Not because I followed the 7 easy steps to my best life now. Had nothing to do with that. Had nothing to do with me going in and adding these things in my life in order to be a better person. No, it had to do with me turning away from my old life and turning towards God and receiving the extravagant position that he was offering me. And recognizing the extravagant love that he was offering. See, when Jesus was accused of being a friend of sinners, he said, yeah, I am. Because these people need the love of the Father. And so he demonstrated it by saying, let me tell you a story about a lost sheep. Some people would just leave the sheep alone, but no, this shepherd in particular went to go find that one sheep. See, that's how the Father cares about you. There's a lost coin, and this woman tears up her house in order to find that lost coin. Just one single lost coin. When she finds it, she celebrates, and that's how the Father searches for you. And then there's this lost son who insulted the Father, who ran off and spent all of the money that he had. But when he came back, the Father ran towards him and offered him a new life, offered him his inheritance all over again. That's how the Father loves you. See, Jesus didn't come to earth to die and fix your problems. Jesus came to die and give you a new life altogether. So I don't know where you're at, but if we could all just do this, if we could just stand where we are. I don't know where you're at, but I do know that there is a heavenly Father who is willing to bankrupt the heavens in order to bring you back to him. There was a heavenly Father who is willing to bankrupt the heavens to bring me back to him. We are offered an extravagant position because of his extravagant love. Because of his extravagant love. And that's the offer that's on the table for you today. You have the offer for an extravagant position because of the Father's extravagant love for you.